Hi everyone, Kristen here on behalf of Virtual Clarinet Academy. Today we're going to be talking through some tips on how to tame your Altissimo and make that most extreme register of the clarinet sound the very best that it can. One common problem when entering the Altissimo is that the pitch that we're expecting to hear sounds as something that is lower, or is what we would say like undervoiced. This sounds kind of like a grunt or like a fuzzy sound. I'll demonstrate that for you now. Is what we're expecting to hear. So that time, pretty much no sound came out, or maybe you heard a little bit of residual, maybe like fuzz. So if that's happening to you, regardless of what the note is, check a couple things. First, notice where is your tongue in your mouth. The tongue should be high and forward towards your front teeth in the reed. If you practice saying he, think of like a hissing cat, or key. That also arches the middle of the tongue and keeps the front of the tongue very forward. You can also check your air support and that your air is moving fast. Often, especially with younger or advancing students, as they enter this higher register, they will not move their air fast enough or put nearly enough into the clarinet in order to get that sound to speak. Another common culprit of the undervoiced or undertoned notes is the amount of mouthpiece and reed that are in the mouth to begin with. A lot of players will shy away from putting more mouthpiece in to begin with, which just makes producing a tone harder in general, and this becomes especially apparent as you enter the extreme register of the clarinet. So in addition to setting more mouthpiece in the mouth, you can also use your thumbs to help encourage that habit as players transition into the Altissimo. So first thing is you can use the left thumb to just gently push up against the top teeth. We encourage students never to bite down or squeeze the teeth together, and using this trick encourages that push up to free up the reed without using the jaw to do the pushing up, which ends up just squeezing more tightly. And then using the right thumb to just push a little bit, like a millimeter more into the mouth, again, just to keep those teeth nice and open. Another misconception is that playing in the Altissimo requires less or slower air in order to produce a controlled, beautiful sound. This is of course false. And playing in any register requires the same amount of air pressure and speed, and I would argue, and I think many would argue, that playing in the Altissimo requires just a little bit faster and a little bit more focused air in order to contain a beautiful sound. So I'm going to demonstrate a slow air, or an under-supported air, and then also a fast focused air. So as you can hear, the tone is rather poor, especially the higher I go. I had to really think about slowing down and like warming up my air, which we want to really speed up and cool down our air as we're playing. Here's those same notes with fast, supportive air. As you can hear, the sound is much clearer and much more focused. I felt like I had control over those sounds even. The other problem that players will run into in the Altissimo is overvoicing, or getting notes that are higher. Students often experience this as getting a squeak or just playing like a non-note, when in reality what they're doing is overvoicing or overshooting the position of the note they're trying to play. I most commonly encounter this when students are playing either D sharp or E natural in the Altissimo. They'll either overshoot to a high G sharp or to a high A. So if this is the case for you or for students that you work with, my first checkpoint is actually to check back in with your tongue. We mentioned earlier that it's really important to have a high forward tongue position. What can happen is that you can over position the tongue, and that's allowing for you to overshoot your target. I'm going to show you now, using only my tongue position, how easy it is to just move the tongue a little bit and get a different note. I realize you can't see my tongue as I'm doing this, but what I'm going to be doing inside my mouth is thinking like E and then a higher E in order to move the tongue and get a different sound. I really feel that as like the forward part of my tongue just kind of lifting and then relaxing back down. It's the tiniest little movement, but as you might imagine, for a student learning to play clarinet or someone who's advancing on the instrument and working hard to do so, it does take a lot of fine motor control in order to know where to go. Embouchure can also be a culprit when you're experiencing overvoiced or higher notes than you know you should be getting. Sometimes students will use a lot of jaw pressure to try to control in the Altissimo especially. You might not notice this in working with students or working in your own practice until you get to the Altissimo, because it is so sensitive to how it responds. So if you suspect that this might be the case, just double check how much jaw pressure you're using. Really notice, are you biting down? Do you feel a lot of pressure and a lot of pain in your bottom lip when you play? If you look on your mouthpiece patch, do you have those telltale marks that are like chewed through? If that's the case, then you might experiment with something like double lip, where you wrap the top lip over your teeth as well as the bottom lip over your teeth. That is a wonderful help because it really hurts if you're biting. You might also just experiment with bringing the corners in, or like I was mentioning earlier, pushing up against the top teeth, pushing up a little bit more with the right thumb to keep plenty of mouthpiece in the mouth so you don't have to work as hard. It's entirely possible that you're not using enough mouthpiece and that you're squeezing on the smaller amount that you are using in order to overcompensate and make the reed work harder, when you could really just make the reed work for you. Speaking of reeds, know that using a harder reed may make it a little bit easier to play in the Altissimo. As we advance as clarinet players, harder reeds are designed to respond more easily and with a more beautiful sound than softer reeds. I'm in no way saying go out today and try a harder reed, because it might not be the right choice for you. But if you feel like you have tried everything and you've worked with a private teacher or with friends or other coaches and just nothing seems to be working, it may be worth experimenting with a half strength harder. For example, going from a 3 to a 3.5, or a 3.5 to a 3.5 plus, just to see if that does make any difference at all. Y'all, thanks so much for taking the time to check out this video. I really hope it helps give you some things to think about as you're working to perfect and tame your Altissimo. Remember that anything we do on clarinet takes time and consistent practice and a lot of patience. I'm right there with you. Altissimo is something I've struggled with for a while and am working a little bit every day to get better at. If you really enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe to our channel or like or comment below if you have any other questions. Otherwise, we hope to connect with you on social media and wish you the very happiest practicing.